Okay, so welcome to Sunday Poetry of Enlightenment. Last time, 2 weeks ago, we were reading some poems by Billy Collins, and we were having such a jolly time. I thought we might do a few more of his today. So let me get one up on the screen. Okay, so you can all unmute yourselves, I believe. Can you all see, are you seeing The Breather on the screen there?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Um, The Breather by Billy Collins. Just as in the horror movies, when someone discovers that the phone calls are coming from inside the house, so too I realize that our tender overlapping has been taking place only inside me. All that sweetness, the love and desire, it's just been me dialing myself, then following the ringing to another room to find no one on the line. Well, sometimes a little breathing, but more often than not, nothing. To think that all this time, which would include the boat rides, the airport embraces, and all the drinks, it's been only me and the two telephones, the one on the wall in the kitchen and the extension in the darkened guest room upstairs. Okay. Okay, let's take our shoes off and run through this. And by the way, please feel free to unmute yourselves and jump in at any time with comments, questions. First of all, everyone notice the pun in the title? Right? What are two senses of the word breather? Okay, when we say I'm going to take a breather, right? I'm going to take a rest. I'm right. Does no one use that expression anymore? Am I the only one that remembers that?
Yes, but wasn't there a horror movie that had that title?
Um,
Or am I crazy?
Possibly both. Um, I don't know if there's been a horror movie with that. I mean, it's a standard. It's a cliche. I mean, this is one Colbert uses this as a point of reference, and oh no, the calls are coming from inside the house. He'll do political. He'll do things about Trump. The calls are coming from inside the White House, right? I mean, it's such a cultural cliche. It's been used in at least one. Actually, probably the movie you're thinking of is called When a Stranger Calls.
Oh, yeah. I
With
think you're right.
Remember, with Carol Kane plays the babysitter.
Ooh,
Right?
yeah.
Don't watch it. It's really awful.
Especially if you've been a babysitter.
Yes. Right. Um, so but there is that term, again, what I'm saying is puns, and poets use puns a lot. Poetry has to be telegraphic. You got to get as many levels of layers of meaning and resonances and all that in a short space as you can. So one way to do that is with puns. Often puns are, there's the old thing about pun being the lowest form of humor. I don't know why that would be. I had a girlfriend once years ago who, you know, after I hit her with yet another pun, she turned up her nose, she said, and she announced that she did not enjoy puns. And that was the moment I knew this relationship is doomed. Um, so,
No humor.
well, not my kind of humor anyway. So, in any case, um, uh, using terms with double meaning, and to me, finding relationship between the meanings, having the meanings be not just random, but the relationships between the double meanings, and having it all bear on the theme of the poem. If you can do that, then you got something. Um, we did John a couple of Sundays on John Donne. He's all about poems. I mean, all about puns. So the breather, it's a pause, but also this is about someone breathing at the other end of the phone. Just as in the horror movies, when someone discovers that the phone calls are coming from inside the house, right? So as we've just established, that's a source of horror, right? The guy making the horrible calls. Specifically in that film, Louisa, you may recall, when a stranger calls, he calls the babysitter and says, "Have you checked the children?" Yeah, yeah, yeah. And she checks the children, and we're not going to say, but it's very awful. So when the cops call, you call the cops, and they call you back and they say, "We've traced the call. It's coming from inside the house." Run, get out of there. Right. But look, so we all know that. We all know that horror movie cliche. But of course, what a good poet does is finds a deeper level of meaning and finds something else to do with it. So too, I realized that our tender overlapping has been taking place only inside me. Right? Our tender overlapping. What a lovely phrase that is, right? For what? What is that about? Our tender overlapping.
It's whatever the poet thinks it is, but
Yeah.
it's sad. It's sad.
Yeah, it's sad that it's only one-sided, that you thought this thing was going on from both sides, that there's this I mean, that is a beautiful phrase, tender. We use the word love so much, or affection, and it's just hard to hear those words fresh. So one of your jobs as a poet is find fresh ways to express it, and to express the different nuances of it. There may be people in your life that you would never necessarily declare, "Oh, I love you," but there's a tender overlapping, right? Some sharing of stuff, some sharing of some space, that there is a tenderness, there's a sweetness to it, and you assume it's from both sides. But what's he saying? It's been taking place only inside me. All that sweetness, the love and desire, it's just been me dialing myself, then following the ringing to another room to find no one on the line. Well, sometimes a little breathing, but more often than not, nothing. Now, interestingly enough, years ago when I used to study with my teacher Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and one of the things that he said, um, oops, um, quite one of the things that he said quite often and a lot of stuff he said quite often till we heard it, was that actually all feelings, all emotions take place within the self, that they're all coming from the self, through the self, to the self. It's a pretty interesting way to look at it. All right. All feelings, all our drama, emotional drama, all our love affairs, everything is within the self, from the self. All emotions, I think he said, all feelings are directed from the self to the self. Now, don't take anyone's word for any of this stuff, but it might be something interesting to check out. Everything happens within our awareness, right? I mean, this is our continuing theme of exploration. Do we ever experience anything outside our awareness? By definition, not. If you're experiencing something, you're aware of it, right? It's within our awareness. We never experience, by definition, we never experience anything outside of our awareness. So you can have 500 people sitting in an auditorium listening to a speaker, and they might all agree afterward about oh, what a brilliant speech she made or something. But each one of those has had their own experience of the speaker and what she said. Right? It's like the story, all of this stuff, all this stuff, which is psychological insight, is all expressed in archetypal form in the old, in the spiritual traditions. In this case, it's the story of Lord Krishna and the 108 gopis. Lord Krishna is he's like the rock star god. He's like forever 26 years old and completely beautiful. And he's a musician. He plays the flute, and he wanders through the forest playing the flute, and all the gopis means the milkmaids. They're out there tending the cows. All the gopis fall in love with him. Right. So, gopis, groupies, pretty close, right? So you've got the rock star and his groupies or his gopis or whatever they are. So they're all in love with him, and the story builds to the big scene, which is the big country dance is coming. They're all living out in this rural village of Vrindavan, which we've been to, by the way. That Vrindavan is the city that's all about Krishna. Everywhere you go, it's like the whole city is dedicated to Krishna, and all the stories about the life of Krishna, which is all mythological or semi-mythological. Like there's a story about him when the bad guys, the demons, were sending rain to to destroy the village. He picks up a mountain and holds it over all the villagers to protect them. So we've seen that mountain that he supposedly picked up. Oh, but the charming part of that story is that he holds up the mountain, and all the villagers go, "Oh, Lord Krishna is helping us out so much. We want to help him." So each one grabs a little stick, and they're all helping him hold up the mountain with their little stick. And of course, it's so sweet because their little stick is not needed, but you do that anyway, right? It's like okay, the Lord, cosmic intelligence, is running this show. We do our little bit to help, quote unquote. This is a digression on a digression. I'm talking about the gopis, right? So we get to the big scene, which is the big country dance is happening. This is like the prom, right? And who's going to be Lord Krishna's prom date? Because there's whole 108 gopis, and of course the 108 gopis all represent us. We're all the devotees of God, the devotees of the infinite, the meditators, the ones who want the Holy Spirit to inhabit us, just as the gopis want Lord Krishna to make love to them. So he's promised to be the prom date to every one of them. So what's going to happen? How's the problem going to be solved? The big night comes, we find out. The big reveal is that Lord Krishna just manifests himself in 108 bodies. Right? So there's 108 Krishnas dancing with 108 gopis. And the punchline, the end of the story is each of the gopis is thinking, yes, but I'm dancing with the real Krishna. And each one of them was right. Right? So this has something to do with our poem. Anyway, it's a great story. All the it's as if Billy Collins here, right? It's as if he's recognizing that same thing that Maharishi said, that our feelings all flow from the self through the self to the self. But when Maharishi says it, of course, he's got a more expanded sense of what self means. Self is boundless awareness. It's not just a personality tucked inside of a body, like, zipped inside a bag of skin. It's boundless, this boundless aware presence, which everything happens within. So that's not so sad. That's not so sad. What I'm sort of feeling like is that I think Billy Collins here is intuiting, kind of getting half of the story. He's intuiting that feelings all happen within the self. They're directed from the self to the self. And he gets the sadness of that when we've not experienced the boundlessness, the radiance, the glory of what the self is, which makes it okay that all feelings are going from the self to the self. And because the self is boundless, that can include all the so-called other people. Is any of this making sense? Kind of? Okay.
Yes.
Good. To think that all this time, which would include the boat rides, the airport embraces, and all the drinks, it's been only me and the two telephones, the one on the wall in the kitchen and the extension in the darkened guest room upstairs. Oh boy, that's good. This is what a poet does. He finds concrete, specific images, experiential stuff to express these subtleties of feeling, right? So we're talking, okay, if we're talking to ourselves, what are the two telephones? The one on the wall in the kitchen, what's the kitchen like? It's brightly lit. It's trafficked. Everyone's always in and out of the kitchen. It's kind of the more public part of ourself, right? But the extension in the darkened guest room upstairs, right? That's the more secret part of ourselves. That's the more private part. He's getting close to, I think, to getting, the transcendental nature of the self, the fact that there's something that's normally hidden, right? Here, in this case, it's very poignant. And it's a guest room. It's a guest room. It's like it's waiting to welcome someone, right? We've got that piece of us. It's part of our whole love affair with ourself, within ourself. But we're always, we, in different times of our life, we welcome other people into that room, other guests. Oh, now this lover, now this spouse, right? And, lovers may come and go, spouses may come and go, but It's always that same telephone. It's always that same guest room. It's always part of the self. The self remains. Anyway, that's what I'm getting here. Let's move on. Let's do another one. Are you seeing the chairs that no one sits in? No. Okay. Evidently, I have to. I have to do something different here. Hang on. Okay, now you're seeing that the chairs that no one sits in. Good. All right. So once again, one of the things I love about Billy Collins, the way he takes just the most ordinary things, the things we all go, "Oh yeah, I've seen that. I've known," but we don't stop and kind of relate to it in this deeper way that he does, squeeze meaning out of it the way that he does. The chairs that no one sits in. You see them on porches and on lawns down by the lakeside, usually arranged in pairs, implying a couple who might sit there and look out at the water or the big shade trees. The trouble is, you never see anyone sitting in these forlorn chairs, though at one time it must have seemed a good place to stop and do nothing for a while. Sometimes there is a little table between the chairs where no one is resting a glass or placing a book face down. It might be none of my business, but it might be a good idea one day for everyone who placed those vacant chairs on a veranda or a dock to sit down in them, for the sake of remembering whatever it was they thought deserved to be viewed from two chairs side by side with a table in between. The clouds are high and massive that day. The woman looks up from her book. The man takes a sip of his drink. Then there is nothing but the sound of their looking, the lapping of lake water, and a call of one bird, then another, cries of joy or warning. It passes the time to wonder which. That's very nice. Any comments on this? You all seen those chairs he's talking about? Yeah, I have. This is more of an East Coast thing. He's clearly an East Coast guy. You see them on porches and on lawns down by the lakeside, usually arranged. Yeah, when I lived in the Northeast, people had porches and there were lakes, usually arranged in pairs, implying a couple who might sit there and look out at the water or the big shade trees. The trouble is, you never see anyone sitting in these forlorn chairs, though at one time it must have seemed a good place to stop and do nothing for a while. Ah, interesting. Here's a poem that seems to be, at least in part, about doing nothing. That's a favorite theme for us. Just stop and just stop. Just stop and stop. Just stop and be. Just stop and hang out in the silence. Stop and hang out together. Stop and see. Stop and breathe. Take a breather in the good sense. Why have the people stopped stopping there? Where are they? What are they doing? Just doing a bunch of stuff. Being busy with their busyness. There's always something more important to do than nothing. You ever notice that? Always something more important to do than nothing. And then you wind up not getting around to nothing. That's why we have to make up, bullshit words like meditation to get people to sit down and do nothing, to sit down and just be. We have to make up long words for it, and sing stuff in Sanskrit or Tibetan to give a little exotic flavor to get people into the tent of nothing. Sometimes there's a little table between the chairs where no one is resting a glass or placing a book face down. Now you see that, it's so simple, but so the subtle little trick he does there. No one is resting a glass or placing a book face down. Right? You see the subtle, right? He could have said, where there isn't anyone resting a glass or placing a book face down, right? There isn't anyone, but he says, where no one is resting. So that puts the last line is into the positive form. And it's as if, no one's, there's this absence, this invisibility is resting a glass or placing a book face down. It's as if he summoned the ghosts. Can you see that? Can you see that? It's very quiet. It's very subtle. It's like, Mr. No One is, Mr. and Mrs. No One are here now with their glass and their book. Kind of making a presence of the absence, which of course is what the whole poem is about. Like, we need to stop and occupy those chairs and enjoy the presence of absence. The presence of nothing, sit and do nothing. It might be none of my business, but it might be a good idea one day for everyone who placed those vacant chairs on a veranda or a dock to sit down in them for the sake of remembering whatever it was they thought deserved to be viewed from two chairs side by side with a table in between. Notice how modestly, like, well, excuse me, sir and madam. Gee, maybe it's a good idea to keep that appreciation of nothing in your life. Take a little time from all your busy something, and take a little time for nothing. You had that thought at least once in your life when you set those chairs on the veranda or on the dock. There's been at least one passing moment in your life where you appreciated the importance of that. Maybe we get back to it. Of course, now when I say it like that, it's like a polemic. It's like it's boring, but with his lovely poet's ear, it becomes charming. And of course, always with his poet's eye, he's going to make it concrete. He's going to turn it into you don't just make it general. When you're writing an essay, you might be general. But even then, actually, it's good to be as specific as possible, make it concrete. So look what he does, how he then makes it like a specific scene, a specific day or evening. The clouds are high and massive that day. Right? I mean, he could have said, well, we might imagine that the day they choose, the clouds might be high and massive, but he makes it a reality for us. Hey, what the hell? He's the poet. Within the framework of the poem, he's God. Let there be high, massive clouds. There's high, massive clouds. The clouds are high and massive that day. The woman looks up from her book. The man takes a sip of his drink. Then there is nothing but the sound of their looking. Oh, hello. The sound of their looking. What does looking sound like? Yeah, it sounds exactly like one hand clapping. right? It's the sound of silence, but it's silent awareness, right? Looking is awareness, but just not saying anything, that just that aware presence. There it is. There it is. He's made it manifest for us with the simplest of words and images. Then there is nothing but the sound of their looking, the lapping of lake water, and a call of one bird. You know, there's a famous haiku. Actually, this was the first haiku ever written by Basho, Basho. He's considered the father of the haiku. And the first haiku goes something like, the old well, frog jumps in, plop. Right? The old well, frog jumps in, plop. Right? So what do you have? You've got the old well is, of course, is silent. Then we introduce something to resonate within it. The frog jumps in, it enlivens the silence and makes the kerplop sound, and presumably the ripples coming out from that. The resonance makes it so that we hear it. When the sound is introduced, it does not take away our ability to experience the silence. It deepens it. It deepens it. You've all experienced this, you know. And look, it's right here. Then there is nothing but the sound of their looking, the lapping of lake water, and a call of one bird. Right, the bird's call resonates in the silence. It deepens. You can feel the whole volume of the old well when the frog jumps into it. We feel the bigness of the sky, of the water, with the call of the bird. A call of one bird, then another, cries of joy or warning. It passes the time to wonder which. You know, kind of, there's our whole life right there, right? Here's these sounds, here's these things. Wait, is that joy? Is it warning? Is it good news? Is it bad news? Right? Is this, and it's just all us interpreting it. You know, who the hell knows? But it passes the time to wonder which. Okay, that's what we do. We speculate, we read the news. It's good news, it's bad news. Passing the time is the definition of life. You know, now we're back. It's like we've had this moment of eternity, the sound of looking, like just silence, eternity. And okay, now we're back in time a little bit, but there's still that eternity, that timelessness, that silence in the background. You know, and again, what's lovely is he doesn't say any of that. He just says, you know, bird, lake water, and it's all there. Anything else about this one? Okay, let's do another one. Okay, here we go. Report from the subtropics. You're all seeing that? Okay. For one thing, there's no more snow to watch from an evening window. and no armfuls of logs to carry into the house. So cumbersome, you have to touch the latch with an elbow. Okay. If you had to right now, could you guess what part of the country Billy Collins is from? Can we say with confidence New England? I think so.
Yeah.
And can we say with confidence that this poem's like a postcard home from vacation? Like someone, his wife or someone has made him go to Florida. Sounds like. So with that as the premise, let's read on and then see by the end, you tell me how he's enjoying his vacation in Florida. Okay. For one thing, there's no more snow to watch from an evening window and no armfuls of logs to carry into the house. So cumbersome, you have to touch the latch with an elbow. And once inside, no iron stove waiting like an old woman for her early dinner of wood. No hexagrams of frost to study carefully on the cold glass pages of the bathroom. And there's no black sweater to pull over my head while I wait for the coffee to brew. Instead, I walk around in children's clothes, shorts and a t-shirt with the name of a band lettered on the front, announcing me to nobody. The sun never fails to arrive early and refuses to leave the party, even after I go from room to room, turning out all the lights and making a face. And the birds with those long white necks, all they do is swivel their heads to look at me as I walk past, as if they all knew my password and the name of the city where I was born. So how's he enjoying his vacation?
It's pretty silly to him.
It's pretty silly. Yeah, it is. Yafa, you used to take these Florida vacations.
Yeah, every year.
Yeah.
I mean, what I love is that he says the sort of annoying sort of things about having to carry wood and all that, because it is sort of like, oh geez, it's cold and you have to wait, but clearly he prefers that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. When he says, no black sweater to pull over my head while I wait for the coffee to brew, right? When he says that, and there's no black sweater to pull over my head while I wait for the coffee to brew, how many senses, how many of our five senses has he involved in those simple two lines? Right? The word black brings in the sense of sight. Sweater, pull over my head. There's the sense, the tactile sense. We all know what it feels like to pull a sweater over your head, right? I think it's a wool sweater, by the way. I'm feeling that a little bit of scratchiness to it. While I wait for the coffee to brew, and there's the smell of the brewing coffee when you've come inside on a cold winter's day. There's nothing bad about that. It's such a I'm going to say cozy moment. The word cozy so does not do justice to the way he's presenting it here. It's just a perfect moment. You don't even feel, gee, if only the coffee would brew faster. Right? You want that you want that coffee. You're going to enjoy it, but there's just the perfectness of that moment of just coming in from the cold. We can hear, even he hasn't said it. He hasn't even directly said it, but we can hear the coffee starting to percolate and the hiss of the gas underneath it. All of that. And there is a grown-upness to it. Winters for I mean, in a way, winter's for children playing in the snow and all that, but but winter, when you know the family continuing to survive depends on you. Winter requires a certain grown-upness. This is a grown-up scene, pulling the black sweater over the head, waiting for the coffee to brew, bringing in the firewood. And then what's the contrast? I walk around in children's clothes, right? Shorts and a t-shirt. There's just a silliness, Yaf, as you said, it's silly, it's juvenile. It's he just feels foolish, right? Everyone says, right? Oh, it's so great. The days are so long and warm. And look how he takes that on. The sun never fails to arrive early and refuses to leave the party. Right? The sun is like that stubborn guest who doesn't know when it's time to go home. Remember that John Donne poem we read a few weeks ago? The busy old fool, unruly sun, why dost thou thus through windows and through curtains call on us? Must to thy motions lovers' seasons run, right? It's kind of a, by the way, he has another poem. You can look this one up yourself. It's called Memorizing John Donne's The Sun Rising. And it's a poem about a poem. It's a poem about memorizing that, and it takes all these lines from it and does one further thing with it. I'll leave that for you to play with on your own. So, but here, he may even have had that Donne poem in the back of his mind when he wrote this idea of the sun as being an unwelcome guest. But he turns around. It's at the end of the day where he's annoyed with the sun. God, when the hell are you going to set? Go home. No one has time to leave the party. And the birds with those long white necks, all they do is swivel their heads to look at me as I walk past. As if they all knew my password. And that makes us look down at the date. That's because he's got poetry that's been published since, back in the 80s, I think. September 2012. Okay, so yeah, we're in the computer age now. As if they all knew my password and the name of the city where I was born. What's the significance of that in the context of this?
Well, it's all being revealed, like you're being revealed completely. Like he's in these, barely any, cover up of clothes, and the sun is always there. And so there's he's exposed.
Yeah. Exposed in a not pleasant way. And probably, his pallid white New England complexion, winter complexion. Yeah, so there is that, and that's the upshot of it. But just going back half a step. So password here, we're clearly talking about the computer password, like that's your secret. That's the thing you don't share with people. And in the context of a computer password, when does this come up? The name of the city where I was born. When a site wants to validate your password, right? And it asks you, the secret question, which you don't even remember because it's when you registered for this website 3 years ago, and you told them the name of your favorite teacher, or where you and your spouse went on your first date, or what instrument you play, or what did you want to be when you grow up, or what city were you born in is probably the most common one, right? So there's this feeling of intrusion, this feeling of my privacy, my integrity, has all been violated, and by a bunch of dumb birds swiveling their heads, looking at me like they're all looking at me like, okay, we've got your number. But of course, right, we started we were talking before about puns, the double level of meaning here, right? What's his whole problem throughout this poem? I'm stuck here on this dumb Florida vacation, and I'm a New England boy. That's where I was born. That's stamped all over me. That's there in like every moment of my behavior. You can take the boy out of New England. You can't take the New England out of the boy. And it's like everywhere I go in this alien place, it's like I stand accused of that. I'm an outsider and I'm awkward here. I can't wait for it to be over. So that's fun. What time is it? Okay, it's about time for us to go here. So, so next week we'll do something else. I don't know what, but we'll do it. So, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for playing. Hello, Judy, you made it.
Just barely. I had
Just
my
barely.
times mixed up.
Yeah.
I went online and it said the author hasn't opened yet. And I don't know what happened to the hour between.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes hours have a way of doing that. But yeah, I'll be posting this online on my YouTube channel, so you can see it there.
Well, I'll have to find that again.
Right.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Likewise.
Yep.
Yes.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, same to you.
Maybe
Thanks.
stay
Dave.
Take
safe.
care. Enjoy
Yeah.
enjoy everything.